Rachel Davison, a fourth generation Davison. This is my daughter Anna. She's going to be helping me today, and we're going to show you how to make a zucchini bake. So it's a really simple, economical supper that fills up the whole family, and it feels really good to use fresh fruits and vegetables. So today we're going to be using peppers, zucchini, some fresh basil, stuff like that, just straight out of the field to put into our supper. So the first thing we're going to do is preheat our oven to 375. Here I've got 1 pound of extra lean ground beef. I'm just going to pour in a little bit of oil here so it doesn't burn. You don't need too much. I'm using olive oil. You can use canola or vegetable oil, it doesn't matter. Turn my stovetop on to medium, and I'm going to add my beef and let it start browning. Good. Okay, we're going to cut our onion into just diced pieces. While my beef is browning, I always add just a little bit of salt and pepper to season the meat. It smells better when it's cooking too if it has a little bit of seasoning on it. We'll add more to the recipe later, so not very much. So I always start by chopping off the top like this. Then that middle part just pops out so easily, and this is still perfectly usable. And then it's really easy from there to just pull out the seeds, take out those membranes because they're a little bit bitter. So we want about ½ a cup of chopped green pepper. You can use any bell pepper you like. I'm just using a green one here today. It looks pretty in the casserole with the tomatoes. It's looking good. We're going to put it in our measuring cup here and see how much more we need. That's about 1/4 cup, so I'm going to cut this in half, set aside half for later, and slice this up to add to our measuring cup. So that's going to be about ½ a cup, I think. Let's just check it out here. Perfect. It's cooking away, which is great. That's what we want. We're just going to chop it up so the hamburger is not in big pieces. We want it to be broken up into small pieces. Now while the meat continues to cook, we're going to start chopping up our zucchini and preparing the rest of our ingredients. And we're going to start by just chopping off the top and a little bit of the bottom. So let's start with our yellow one here. I'm going to cut the whole thing in half. So if Anna could chop up this piece for me while I finish this one here. We're hoping to get about 3 cups of zucchini, 2½ to 3 cups. Today I'm just using a store-bought can of stewing tomatoes. Normally I use my own homemade stewing tomatoes, but I'm out for the year. I'm gonna have to wait another week or 2 before I can make any more. This works fine. Looks like it's no longer pink anywhere, and the onions have changed. They're starting to look clear, and the colors are a slightly duller color. That's just perfect. I think our meat is done. So we're gonna add the zucchini, give that a little stir, and then we're gonna add our can of tomatoes. I chose whole tomatoes here, so as I'm stirring it, I'm just gonna break them up a little bit with my spoon so that they're not such big pieces in our casserole. So here I've got measured out ½ a teaspoon of lemon pepper, ½ a teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of salt. You can adjust the salt as you wish. I have a little bit higher because the tomatoes have no salt in them. And then also we want about 1 teaspoon of basil, and I have some fresh basil here from my herb garden that I'm going to chop up. You can use fresh oregano too if you have that, or if not, then dried basil works good too. So we're just going to roughly chop up that basil and add that to our spices. I'm going to sprinkle the seasonings evenly over here, and I'm going to give it a good stir to incorporate it into the mix. So once I'm satisfied that my spices are nicely mixed in there, I'm going to sprinkle my rice in there. This is ½ a cup of dry rice, and I'm going to sprinkle that into our mix, and that's all we need to do on the stove. From here, we're gonna put it in a pan. We're just gonna give it a little grease. I'm gonna use margarine here. Certainly you can use just an oil spray or whatever, but just give it a little grease so that it doesn't stick to your dish later on. We're gonna dump it all in there. It's a little bit runny. That's good because our rice isn't cooked, so we want it to be a little on the runny side right now so that it's nice and set by the time it's done baking. We're just gonna top it with some breadcrumbs. Now these are optional. If you don't put on breadcrumbs, it is actually a gluten-free supper, which is kind of a pro. But in this household, it doesn't matter, so we're gonna sprinkle on breadcrumbs. Just gives it a nice visual appeal. That's 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs. And then also 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. You're gonna wanna buy a Parmesan cheese that's a pretty good quality so that it melts. If it's that pelleted stuff that's dehydrated, it doesn't really melt very well. And we're gonna cover our casserole and bake it for 45 minutes covered. Our oven is nicely preheated to 375. We're gonna place it in and bake it for 45 minutes covered, and then we're gonna uncover it and bake it for 5 more minutes at the end. So I'm gonna set my timer, 45 minutes, and we'll let it bake. So now our zucchini casserole is baked for 45 minutes. Let's take a look at it here. You can see that it's bubbling around the edges and most of the liquid is gone. Our cheese could melt a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna uncover it and I'm gonna put it back in the oven for 5 more minutes, just to let the cheese kind of brown up on the top there. As long as our zucchini isn't crunchy and the rice is cooked through, then your zucchini bake is gonna be good to go. It's gonna be delicious. Okay, so our cheese is nice and browned on top. Our breadcrumbs are crispy. And depending on how much liquid is in it, usually I would shut the lid and let it set for about 10 minutes so that it's not runny when you're putting it on someone's plate. In this case, it actually looks quite good. So I think that tastes so nice with a harvest bun and some fresh from the field green beans. You've got yourself a fresh and tasty supper.